this is about December 15th, where we visit the Baha'i Gardens in Haifa, some famous gardens. We go visit Caesarea, which was a important Roman outpost city, and the place where Herod was king during the time of Jesus. And then we go back to the ship and go out for a side trip to an olive farm that one of the troop leaders owns that's near Haifa. So, the Baha'i Gardens. I really don't know much about the Baha'i. I think Jim knows more than I do. They were beautiful. They're on a place called Mount Carmel. We weren't there a long time, but long enough to be in the peacefulness and the beauty of the gardens, although you couldn't go down into the gardens. Did you want to say anything about the Baha'i, Jim?
The Baha'i, I think, is a fairly modern faith.
Mm-hmm.
They're very peaceful, and they're vegetarian, and it's a spreading religion. And they're persecuted, of course, in some places.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them moved to this area of the Eastern Mediterranean, and they built this garden in the last century as a memorial to one of their leaders, the Bab. And everybody, all the work that was done there was done by volunteers from within the religion. And the gardens are just beautiful from what we can see.
Mm-hmm.
We temporize about that simply because the public isn't allowed in at the hours that we were there. There's certain days and hours when different people can get in, and
right.
we weren't there for that. But it was on Mount Carmel, and Mount Carmel is not like a mountain. It's a long ridge that extends for miles and miles from Haifa on down parallel with the coast. And so there'll be things in the Bible about going up on Mount Carmel. There'll be a lot of things, and it can be anywhere along this ridge.
Was Mount Carmel where Moses got some of the Torah?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No, he never made it to the promised land.
Oh, he never made it to the promised land, did he? That was in Jordan that he was. That was a mountain in Jordan. Okay, so Caesarea. But on the way to Caesarea, not far from it, we stopped right by the ocean, and by the ocean was this huge old Roman aqueduct, very long. And as we walked, our guide showed us you could kick the dirt and pick up pieces of pottery from either Byzantine or Roman times. It washes in from the beach to the beach all the time. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, he likes to go there with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he's found Roman coins.
He found some
there.
Roman coins, yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we all ran around trying to find treasure.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, the aqueduct was to serve Caesarea.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the aqueduct, we went on down to Caesarea. And do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to?
I'm not sure what the size of it was in terms of people, but it's really a very large area. And Herod the Great built it as a tribute to Rome, because the boats from Rome would come up the coast. And so they needed a port to stop into about every, what did they say, 50 miles?
Mm-hmm.
So Capernaum, he actually built the first port in Capernaum. He dredged it and raised the level of certain areas of it so that they could have a port there. And then he built his palace right on the water, and he built a hippodrome for racing horses, and he also built what do you call it, where you have theater?
A theater.
A theater. Okay, there was another name, but he built a theater, a large Roman theater. The theater was only partially there. It's been rebuilt, but it's usable. They do have concerts there. You can see the area where the hippodrome used to be, and you can see the foundations of his palace. So that was pretty exciting stuff. And there's other places you can see parts of buildings.
Yeah, I was confused about the theater thing. It kind of sounded silly when I was asking him about it, because I was confused between amphitheaters and theaters. And it turns out that a theater is a semicircle, and an amphitheater is a full circle. And this was a theater.
Okay.
So I learned that one. Yeah, and you're right. It was the first artificial deep water port. He devised this way of building these floating caissons or whatever that were loaded with a particular kind of volcanic ash that he imported from Italy.
Was it Italy?
And then when it sank, it solidified and formed a solid mass, and so he could build up these break walls out there. And he had that palace built. And the palace was kind of cool because it had two sections. It was on this little peninsula that would stick out, and if you came up to it, you would come to the public portion where the things called peristyles around and a central public meeting place. But if you went on further, it went down to the lower palace, and that's where he lived. And he had swimming pools, and smart guy. And heating. Let's see. The hippodrome, which you usually think of as racehorses, he described it as having chariot races there.
Chariot races, that's right.
And he also showed us where there was a bathroom.
There was a bathroom.
Where people would sit, and the women in our group wanted to know how many were for women and how many for men, and they figured there were more for men than for women, like most public places.
And water flowed underneath these oblong, rectangular blocks, and with space between them. So you would sit on those, but water would flow underneath them, so you could, I guess, clean yourself.
Yeah. And we saw some mosaic floors, and this parts of it had been built over for medieval fortifications back during the Crusades. And that was it. We, as you said, we returned to the ship, had a bit of lunch, and then went up to Shusha's.
Was that her name?
Something like that. I could never get it right.
Okay.
Anyways, we went up to her farm. You want to talk about that, or?
Really, she just told us about how they pressed the olive oils. They were in the olive season right now, so they were out harvesting the olives and pressing them and making olive oil. And so she had olive oil, so she sold us some olive oil, which of course we bought. So we have some Israeli olive oil, and that was great.
Yeah. So,
do you want to say anything about her husband? Or?
Yeah. So really the farm goes back to her husband's family, who came, in the late 19th century?
Yeah.
To Israel. They were Hasidic Jews from Poland. They didn't know how to build anything. They didn't understand farming. They couldn't do anything. It's something a couple hundred families came over, I think, and they ended up buying the swampland, and it was a total disaster. And then I think it was like the Jewish National Fund or something like that sent in people to help them. In return, I guess they sold the land to them, but they ended up teaching them how to build and how to farm, and many of the families went back, but some stayed, and their primary farming is these olive trees. So I think her husband's father was the first generation born there, and his name was Mordecai, and he was the guardian, right? And there's these pictures of him. He looks very handsome and bold with his bandolier across here. And then her husband is named Ehud Yoneh, and he wrote Top Gun. That's what he's mostly known for.
Yeah.
And I've got another book by him, No Margin for Error, about the birth of the Israeli Air Force. So, but he's died, and she runs this farm now, and there's 1,700 olive trees. It's big, and she sells all of her olive oil locally.
Right.
Right. So, I think that's it.
Yeah, I see dinner with Oshri.
Yeah. Oh, I have a picture of us having dinner back at the ship with Oshri and in the Manistee crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
we've been hanging out with people from Manistee.
Manistee, Michigan. It's fun.
That's it.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.